I am Stephen Wilson, and I am running for Congress in the Missouri 3rd District for 2012. And this video is going to be describing something in my platform that is called the Certificate of Birth Deposit. To begin with, the purpose of it is to utilize something that is currently in our derivatives market called the collateralized debt obligation, and I will convert it into a collateralized treasury birth obligation. This is going to be an alternative to some of the collectivism that we now use in regards to the way that we treat the elderly and the way that we have family and social services for children. This is also going to be identified as something that is going to allow the American people to start utilizing accountability, not only as a parent, but throughout their entire adult lives. It's also going to be used as a means of teaching people things about finance, banking, and how to create wealth, because they're going to be forced to be dealing with it from day one. Another reason for this, or another function of it, is going to be to alleviate what is now used by our federal government called the redistribution of consequence, which means that America, if it's going to survive globalism, needs to operate in a merit-based society. And it's also going to be something that allows people to understand that the government offers you a beginning, but it will have nothing to do with the middle or the end. Again, reinforcing the idea that in a global market, we're going to have to go into a merit-based society. And now we get into understanding the actual certificate of the birth deposit itself, what it is, and what it's going to look like. Again, within brevity, basically what this is going to be is, at birth, each citizen is going to get $10,000 worth of a treasury share. The share is going to be a share in the treasury, just like a share in a company that is publicly traded. And depending on the criteria set forth by social workers in the state that the child lives in at that time, the child could receive up to a maximum of $1,000 for the first 15 years of their life. Because of the fact that I'm using some of the modeling done from the derivatives market, I have broken down the tranches as equity, mezzanine, and senior. The equity is high risk, the mezzanine is middle, the senior is low risk, and this would be equal to equity. It would equal the poor, mezzanine would equal the middle, and the senior would equal the high income or the wealthy class. The maximum share value is based on what the parents are rated per their median household income per their social worker at the time of the child's birth. So if a parent if a parent is identified as a mezzanine at the time the child is born, regardless if they go up or down in the social strata, the child can only have a maximum of $20,000 at the age of 15. And theoretically, of course, children that are in the upper class, they would have parents that have greater means of support. Therefore, children that are in risk would be, their obligation would be greater than those in the higher income levels. And finally, the parents or the guardians of the child at the time of the birth, they must declare their income just as they would to the IRS. And here again, this would be based on annual income at the time of the birth. And it's important to note that fraud for these cases would be prosecuted just like any other kind of fraud. If you were going to cheat on your taxes, if you were going to cheat or lie to a court, the parents would be prosecuted at that time. Now that we understand the basic structure, we are going to be moving into the rules of engagement for the certificate of birth deposit. And I'm just going to run these down, and these are not set into stone, but these are the rules set for this particular game. First and foremost, the account does not belong to the parent. The parent cannot surrender or profit from the account at all. No citizen or recipient can cash out the account for its entire value or its face value. Under no condition can a treasury share be used as an exchange mechanism. After the age of 30, the account maximum withdrawal is 50% of the face value of the account at the time of the withdrawal. The withdrawal amounts may vary, but the total amount of withdrawal, 50%, is capped within 1 decade. The decade will be clocked by the time of the first withdrawal. At the age of 22, all childhood debt can be repaid by the recipient from their certificate account. The treasury share will be paid from bank to bank and are accounted for in the exchange of shares for the dollar set by the U.S. Treasury. By that I mean the treasury share is an exchange mechanism from bank to bank, but it is not an exchange mechanism from person to person. For example, you couldn't take a treasury share into Kroger and purchase your milk and bread. The treasury share is an exchange mechanism, but it's utilized from bank to bank. And because of the fact that it is a share, just like a company, its value is based on both what the market can bear and what is happening to the child as the years go on during the childhood development. The social worker that is scoring the child's quality of life is going to be using the criteria set forth by the people of that state. And therefore, when you go from state to state or place to place, your account goes with you. Under no condition can the parent surrender because they decide to leave. If you're born in America, you have an account, and under no conditions can the parent actually use the account for themselves. There is no tax benefit, as there is no tax liability. It's important that this particular rule be acknowledged, because the fact of when the American people start talking about retirement, and they start talking about the different models that people can use, about their traditional and Roth, and about Social Security, and about Medicaid, and about annuity-based citizenship, I just wanted to make that rule as simple as possible for those of you that understand some basic finance. To continue on, the opportunity cost associated with savings cannot be converted into a liability. The opportunity cost of savings will be derived from the retained earnings of the parent. The accumulated debt total from childhood must be repaid in full by the age of 31. The penalty will be the loss of 1% of account balance per 1 year of unpaid childhood debt. And finally, the fractional rate of deposit is the economic counterpart to the percentile rate for withdrawal. Now, I'm going to have to explain the structure of this in order for these rules to be fundamentally user-friendly for those of you that are just learning about this. But these rules, again, these are just a foundation, and I am not going to tell a state what to do. These rules have been established to allow someone to play a game wherein each citizen had a beginning, and that was all. Now we're going to talk about the structure of the certificate of birth deposit in regards to the overall schematic from the Treasury to the recipient. I placed upon the screen just a real simple design. As you can see, the Treasury, the bank, the state of the recipient, which is just indicative of where they live at the time of birth and where they live when the social worker goes through the quality of life score per year. You can also see that the parent and the recipient are tied to the person with the Masters of Social Work. As you can see, the bank officer is a CPA or an MBA, and these requirements should be a little bit obvious. You need professionals to run your affairs. A Master of Social Work is schooled in crisis prevention, children in peril, parents that should never have been parents. MBAs and CPAs were built to go through the analytical. They were built to be consultants. They were built to go through assessments, and they were built to go through forecasting. The certificate of birth deposit is placed in the red because it is identified in finance as a notes payable. And the structure, as you can see, there is a separation of the actual players, because the MBA or CPA that works for the bank is actually an agent for the Treasury. The bank can be a credit union, it can be a commercial bank, it doesn't really matter what kind of bank. But the individual that's directly in charge of the certificate of birth deposit is an agent of the Treasury. And as you noticed, there is no Federal Reserve. I have not played this game for this model in the presence of a central bank. The U.S. Treasury is something that is identified as an entity that does not play favorites. It is what's called as financial neutral or finance neutral, and I have not played the game in the presence of a Federal Reserve, so there's no way for me to tell you how exactly that would work. But in the moment, getting rid of the Federal Reserve would make this game much more functional in the presence of a singular entity like the U.S. Treasury. The rate index for the deposits or the certificate of birth deposit still activate, or still they're operational per the social strata that is indicated by the social worker. The tranches that are used for the derivatives market, the equity, the mezzanine, and the senior, are still identifiable as the low, middle, high income. But the rate index for the deposits are as follows. The equity, for every 25 cents that is deposited, they get 1 treasury share. So if a poor person decided to put in $50 into their child's, if the parent decided to put in $50, then the child's account would increase by 200 treasury shares. For the middle class, or for the mezzanine, it is 50 cents for every treasury share, and for the senior, it is 75 cents for every share. Now, this rate index will be utilized for the entirety of the time that the parent and that the recipient have access to the account. Now, once the recipient has the ability to use the account to take care of their own life, whatever it may be, the payout index is going to be the economic counterpart to the fractional, what do we identify as the fractional rate of lending, or I'm sorry, depositing. And the payout for the equity is going to be 1 treasury share is going to equal 75 cents. For the mezzanine, it will be 1 treasury share for 50 cents, and for the senior, it is 1 treasury share for 25 cents. When we start to look down at the actual chart of progression, we have to break it down per age, because the calendar rotation, that's what's going to be used as an anchor for this particular model. At birth, again, the child is going to receive $10,000 of treasury share, and from the age of 1 to 15, this is how it's going to break down. The parent will have access to the account, but the recipient will not. The access by the parent is for deposit only, and the account is identifiable in modernity as an annuity, or what you would identify as a life insurance policy. When we go into the next bracket, the 16 to 21, the parent has access to the account, but so does the recipient. The access type for both is for deposit only. And again, the account remains just like an annuity or a life insurance policy. When we go to the 22 to 30-year-old bracket, something changes. Here, the parent no longer has access to the account, and that means that the only person that can get to the account is the recipient. The account type transfers from an annuity to a money market. The purpose here is for liquidity, because this is when the recipient is going to be held responsible for the debt load acquired during their childhood. For whatever the parent could not provide for, the parent had to take and draw on that notes payable. At the age of 22, this is when the recipient has to start to repay for everything. It can be anything from medical to housing to food. Whatever the parent couldn't afford, the recipient now has to pay out at the age of 22. This account here is just about deposit. From 22 to 30, the recipient cannot use the account for anything outside of childhood debt. Moving into the next age bracket, the 31 to 50 years old, again, the parent does not have access to the account. Under no condition can the parent use the account. The account type, again, remains what you identify now as a money market account because of the fact that it needs liquidity. The recipient has access to the account, but something here has changed. At the age of 31 to 50, the recipient can actually deposit and withdraw money from the account, and this can be used for whatever they want. There are no rules of engagement other than the amount that can be taken out of the account. What the account is used for has nothing to do with the fact that the only rules on the account have to deal with the hard cap, the 50% of the face value at the time of the withdrawal. 50% is the maximum per 10 years. After the age of 51, access to the account is now from the state and family of the recipient. The access type is going to be for medical, retirement, and death. The money market is still going to remain viable because of the liquidity necessary, and the recipient can, the recipient obviously still has access to the account, but here the account cannot be transferred as a deposit. This is going to be at the end of their life. Theoretically, if they have children of their own, they're going to be start putting their own money, their retained earnings, and the opportunity cost for saving for their child and their certificate of birth deposit. So here after the age of 51, the citizen can no longer put money in the account. It can only be withdrawn, and the cap has got to be remain at the 50% per 10 years. This actually has the ability to be lifted if medical becomes something where the person has no other means of paying for it. So the doctors and the family and the social worker can make that decision on behalf of the person here. It's only fair that I tell you that in the listing of priority, the family and the doctor are actually, they take priority over the decisions by the social worker. If the individual has a living will, if they decided that they were not going to be put on a machine, or if they didn't want to go to a nursing home, if they want home health care, etc., etc. The social worker cannot actually dictate the quality of life for the adult. the social worker was to score the quality of life during childhood. I hope that I was able to explain that in a way that answered most of your questions. I did try to address those that had the ability to reach out to me specifically about things that they didn't understand. Um, I am not a big fan of central banking or central planning. Uh, there is no way for me to mathematically support collectivism, but because of the fact that I've had so many horrible conversations in finance in Missouri, I think that here we have to openly acknowledge that many of the voters don't fundamentally understand retirement models, and they don't understand the future value of present entitlements. And I just want to make it clear that because I'm trying to use a solution-centric platform, that's the reason that this game was being acknowledged, and that's why I'm doing this. Um, this needs to be the beginning of a conversation about what it is that America is supposed to be doing as a government and as an individual. Um, if the market device can support those things, the government is no longer going to be required to do those things. You don't need both. And I think this is something that the Missouri voters, they're going to have to take time to educate themselves on, because I have to tell you that there are quite a few of you that just don't really have a clue about finance and about banking and about the way that the government goes through transfers. So I just wanted to make that clear, that I don't want libertarians to think that I'm trying to promote Marxism or collectivism. This is just about a solution that the people were requiring about Social Security and about Medicaid and about the safety net that has become the United States government. Again, this is Stephen Wilson. I am running for the U.S. Congressional District number 3 in Missouri in 2012. Thank you for your time.